Okay, I see a large crowd down there at the bottom. There are two things I want to really cover. I want to thank you for this opportunity to talk to you because I am really in a proselytizing mood for two reasons. And one is that I think APRS is completely misunderstood. And number two, I want to talk about solar power because solar power time has come. But that'll be at the end of the talk. Slide 2. I need to do that too. Okay. So APRS was always about human-to-human information exchange. It was supposed to be a single-channel information resource. Everything going on in ham radio would appear there as a beacon, and anybody just entering their shack would just monitor APRS, and they'd see everything that was going on. APRS is universal ham radio text messaging. I also want to talk about the National Trail Golden Packet event. Actually, it started out as an Appalachian Trail Golden Packet event, but we want to get people out of their shacks and doing APRS in the field. And then there's some other things that I'll talk on. Slide 3. The Universal Ham Radio Text Messaging Initiative is something I've been trying to do since about the year 2000, and that is that we've got 26 separate systems in ham radio that can text message. And they can all be tied together by the APRS internet network. And in fact, a lot of them are. Now you can text message to and from your APRS radio, to and from your cell phone, to and from your laptop, to and from the internet, to anybody else in the world. But there are still 26 other systems in ham radio that are not tied in. I don't understand why you can be on a chat mode in Echolink, and if somebody is not in their shack, you can't chat with them in their car. I mean, the network is there. We can do this. The radios can communicate. So you'll hear me talking about the Universal Ham Radio Text Messaging Initiative. Next slide. We've got we're up to 9 different APRS radios now since Kenwood first introduced the D7 back in 1998. So it's been 13 years of APRS radios, and still 95% of ham radio operators are completely oblivious to it. In 2011, Yaesu now has an excellent mobile radio, and they have 3 handheld APRS radios, plus Kenwood just recently came out with their top-of-the-line THD 72, shown in the lower right-hand corner. Next slide. But again, every wireless device, or every device, held or within reach of a ham radio operator should be able to send and receive APRS text messages. And so a Jack KG4GJY wrote one, for example, for the one laptop per child laptop, which you used to be able to get for $100. Fantastic machine. And so again, no matter where you are in the world, as long as you're within Wi-Fi range, and remember this, that laptop can do mesh linking and all kinds of neat stuff. Right down there's a little window that will send and receive ham radio text messages to any ham radio call sign in the world. And remember, what we're after here is call sign only addressing. If I want to send a message to KG4GJY, I just type in his call sign, I send the message, and he gets it. No matter where he is, no matter what device he is, anytime, anywhere. That's the goal of APRS, has been since 2000. Here I'm going to talk a little bit about the Golden Packet event. It comes from the name of back in the 1980s when packet radio was first expanding. The local AMRAD organization that finalized the AX25 protocol, they offered an award for the first packet, first transcontinental packet. However, that was completely usurped in the 1990s with wormholes, gateways, and all kinds of nefarious activity on the internet. And so nobody's ever claimed the first packet to go transcontinental. And we think it's a great excuse to get away from field day where packet gets no respect whatsoever and have our own annual event. And you've never had so much fun as pulling out Google Earth and start trying to lay out packet paths. We've got a 14-hop path that'll go from Alabama to Maine, and this will be our 3rd year to attempt text messaging from end to end. And with Google Earth, There it is, going all the way up to Mount Katahdin in Maine. Oh, excuse me. I'm up to slide 9 now. Let's go back. Yeah.
Okay, slide 9.
All right. You sort of saw the way through there. I was talking about what you can do with Google Earth. So slide 9. Now slide 9 shows you how you can lay out a trace on Google Earth and you can see exactly what you're going to hit. And Google Earth is so highly resolved nowadays that you can zoom all the way in on the picnic table and see the fence post where you recommend somebody to set up the APRS digipeater. It's just unbelievable what we can do with Google Earth these days. And remember, that's free. Next slide, number 10, KX40. He got a free application off the internet that will draw ray traces anywhere on Earth. And even though this path on the Google Earth would not show at all a direct path because it would run into 2 mountains, this, when you throw in the 4/3 Earth curvature model, this link here would have a 12 dB margin. So it's really easy to communicate from the mountaintops, and there's no reason why you can't just carry your APRS mobile or walkie-talkie up there and really have fun. All right, now, I want to talk about the hike across Maryland. This is an event we just did 2 days ago, this weekend, and it was my first time in a long time out locally doing APRS the way I think it should be done. And what it is, the red line there, I'm on slide 11, is from the 40 miles of the Appalachian Trail across Maryland. And everybody knows that we've got great coverage of APRS in Maryland. And you can see on the upper left-hand corner, I mean, you barely see it, but the upper left-hand corner is the digipeater in Hagerstown on a mountain range, and it hits the Appalachian Trail broadside from the west. And then we have Frederick in the lower right. That digipeater on its mountain range hits the Appalachian Trail broadside from the right. And so you'd think that you'd have fantastic coverage everywhere in Maryland on the Appalachian Trail. And that is true. However, that's also what prevents you from getting any reliable coverage, because your 5-watt HT, even though it's line of sight to those digipeaters, it can hit them solid. Those digipeaters are also being hit by 300 to 500 other people from Baltimore to Philadelphia, and all those packets have to contend with it. And so what most people don't realize is the way to set up to do an event is have your output on 144.39 so everybody sees it, but have your inputs for your event on 144.99. We chose that because it's easy, just plus 600. So everybody in the event operates with a plus 600 offset. And all we had to do was put up one digipeater at a guy's house. You see it, WN3R, happens to be on the same mountain range. And it listens on 144.99 and digipeats everything over on the 3.9 where it joins the network. And next slide, what you'll see on slide 12 is the result. This hiker hiked NE3R hiked 2 or 3 weeks ago with his HT, beaconing once every 2 minutes or so. And the blue dots are the result of his hiking. And that is along the ridge. He can see, if the leaves weren't on the trees, he could see the digipeaters either side of the mountain range. But you'll notice there were times as much as 30 or an hour long when he was not heard because his little 5-watt packets had to contend with all the traffic on the East Coast. Now, so for the event, we set up the 144.99 input digipeater, and now the red dots show his hiking during the event, and sure enough, there was a tripling of performance from 30% success rate to well over 97% rate. And with that 97% rate, you see there was only one space for about 10 minutes when we did not hear from him, as opposed to over an hour we did not hear from him before. So don't forget about separating your inputs from your outputs when you're doing a special event. Now, the other thing that's very frustrating to me, at this hike across, I'm on slide 13. At this hike across Maryland, there were 150 runners, I'm going to call them runners even though they're hikers, they've got to do 40 miles in a day. The ham radio operators have never attempted to track all the runners. They say, gosh, we're lucky to get only 4 APRS hikers to act as sweep hikers. We can't possibly keep track of all the runners. And I said, what do you mean you can't? And so that morning, while my daughter was eating her cereal, I pulled out the APRS HT, a THD-72, and in that 10 minutes that she was eating her breakfast, I trained her on how to send text messaging. And my son, the night before, I had shown, it's the first time he'd ever seen a D-72, and although they have their ham license, they've never really used APRS. So I set them out on the trail, and they had no problem whatsoever entering every single runner that they passed. And here, in less than a dozen messages, my son text messaged the position and time of every runner that he ran into. And I asked him, was it laborious? Was he hard? He says, no, it's no different than tweeting or text messaging. They do it all the time. It's just that the old FUDs in ham radio just refuse to accept text messaging from a keypad as a means of communications. It's ridiculous. We've had text messaging in APRS handhelds for 13 years, and yet the old FUDs in ham radio just still say, well, geez, what we need something in ham radio is like a cell phone. In fact, I can tell you about the ARRL had a special meeting at Dayton about 6 years ago where they were doing all this hand-wringing about what are we going to do to appeal to the youth of today. They all have cell phones and text messaging, and they can do all kinds of stuff, and we don't have anything like that in ham radio. And I just jumped up on my chair. I was in the back of the room. I said, you guys have got to be kidding me. At that time, we have had an HT with text messaging in it, just like cell phones, for a decade, for 10 years. And you old farts at the ARRL have just not been paying attention. So anyway, I'm very frustrated that all the world and everybody under 24 years of age has no problem whatsoever in text messaging, and yet ham radio operators, all they want to do is bring along a IC2AT and read out numbers, and of course then they say, well, it's too many numbers, we're not going to read it out, and so they don't communicate. Slide number 14. Now, what is APRS? And I can tell you one thing it's not, and it's not maps. You look down at the map in the lower left corner, that was an early APRS client map. You can't see ham radio on there. You can't see the stations, you can't see the other users, you can't see anything. The map in the upper right-hand corner, at least the ham radio activity shows up. So it's not about vehicle tracking, and it's not about maps. It's about a network of people communicating in real time. Slide 15. So what is the definition of APRS? Well, it's the automatic packet reporting system. It's not position. I did change its position in the mid-1990s when GPS became available, because then it became possible to automatically have your network location move as you moved, but I've since regretted that, and I've gone back to packet reporting system. It's a two-way information exchange system, not a bunch of one-way trackers. And like I said, it's supposed to be a single channel for all ham radio activities. If you've got an HF net going on, somebody should be putting out a beacon on APRS with the frequency, and so that just anybody in the area can say, oh, look what's going on, tune in and join the network. Okay, slide number 16, we all know how it works, and that is anybody can digipede off of anything, or primarily the high digipeders, and then anything heard through the digipeders is usually fed into the internet. Next slide. Slide number 17. And of course, we all know how it works. Absolutely everything on the planet goes into the APRS internet system, including what comes down from satellites. And so, although everybody in the footprint of a digipeater or in the footprint of a satellite can all communicate with each other, everything they do is fed into the internet. Now, the only thing that comes back out of the internet is if it's a message, because the message is the only thing that is directed to an individual call sign, and so that's the only way we know that that thing should come off the internet and back out to RF. Next slide. By the way, I'm hoping I'm going to go through these slides pretty quickly because there's 100 of them, and I don't want to put you guys all to sleep. So the things that I go over too fast, you can download the PowerPoint presentation and review them at your own speed. APRS from the beginning was all about seeing the network. You see the original map there of Maryland, Washington, D.C., Baltimore, Annapolis, and the Chesapeake Bay. That was the original APRS DOS map. I could care less that there wasn't a lot of detail on it because the only thing that was important to me was the packet network. Who could talk to who, what their range was, what the digipeaters were. There's a world of difference between a digipeater on a 600-foot tower and somebody with an antenna on his deck. And most APRS programs these days, you don't see that. You see two icons. You can't tell the difference from one to the other. It's ridiculous. Next slide. Slide 19. The other thing that's frustrated me about most client software is that APRS always had color as an attribute on all symbols on the map. There were 8 different colors, and every color represented very important information. You can see on this map, on the interstate there was my call sign WB4APR. I'm kind of a light blue color, and that means I'm a moving or a dead reckoned station. And you can see the little dot about a ½ inch away from my car, and that's where my last position reported was. But the position of my car has been dead reckoned in the direction that I was going, and that line gets longer and longer and longer as time goes by. And it's very frustrating to me that most client software left out dead reckoning. If you leave out dead reckoning, you're looking at something that is instantly obsolete. You can't tell if those icons have been there for a day, a week, an hour, or a minute. Dead reckoning brings the dimension of time to a display. The yellow car up there on going east, that means that's an object that you have uplinked. The purple car, a chase, about in the center of the map, that's an object that somebody else has placed on the map. The tracker in the lower right-hand corner, that's a gray. It's a little bit hard to see, but it's gray instead of a white vehicle. Gray means it's a tracking one-way system, and you cannot send and receive messages to it. Anything that's green is considered a digi, and anything that's blue shows the weather stations, and a car that has been alarmed or tagged somehow for special tracking will show up as red. Again, all those color attributes were ignored by most client software. Very frustrating. So again, here, this is a little display, slide 20, that shows all the different color attributes. And of course, the original APRS symbols pointed in the direction they were going, and most Windows programs just slap a silly little icon on the map, even if it's going the opposite direction. Although I'm glad to see that APRS.FI now tries to make a point in the direction that you're headed. Next slide, slide 21. Once all this data is transmitted and gobbled up by the internet, of course, you have all the resources of the internet, including weather maps, airplane photos, maps, and just everything. Next slide, slide 22. Now that we're tied into Google, you've got the Google Maps and Google Views. You can zoom all the way in and see my parking place these days on Google Earth. Slide number 23. The APRS information system, of course, the system that started it was Find You down in Florida, and when you bring up a station on that, you kind of get these. You get the map view, but then you could click on nearby activity, and you get this view, and it shows everybody sorted by distance from you. That's the red oval, and you can also see the messages, everybody that's sending and receiving messages. Next slide. When you click down at the bottom of findyou.com, you can say, click to show all these stations on a map, and here's, again, my local area, Washington, D.C. to the left, Baltimore at the top, and Annapolis to the right. And you can see that we've got quite a bit of APRS activity, and it's nice to see. Now, everybody on that map there is within VHF range, one repeater VHF range, and so those are all the people I can talk to and see what they're doing in ham radio. I'm very, this is findyou.com, but there's also APRS.FI and OpenAPRS.net and other, anybody can write an application to mine the APRS data. Next slide. So slide 25 is the one that I really like to see these days because that's kind of the latest effort by Hesu over in Finland. And although that's where his web pages originated, it's just fast, you know, the world is a very small place. And so he's got good maps, and the symbols all show up there, their track history show up there, and in the upper right-hand corner, there's a list, there's 6 kind of, you know, international symbols for functions, and the one that has a little red oval and a little purple oval, if you click on those, then you can bring up that power height gain circle, and you can see that capability that I've always liked to see in APRS, and that is what is the radio range of all of these stations. So anyhow, the beauty of APRS.FI is it's very user-friendly. You can just tell anybody, including your grandma, says, if you want to see me, just go to APRS.FI. And when the person goes there, all they have to do is enter a call sign or a city location, and they can see all of APRS activity around them. So that's the easiest way to get people to see what APRS is all about. However, it gives them the totally wrong impression. They think of APRS then as a vehicle tracking system, and it's far, far more than that. Slide 26. Again, you can go on these sites and see messages. You know, there's nothing private about ham radio messaging, and so you can see who's saying what to who about what. Slide 27. All these weather is a very important aspect of APRS, so all of these sites give you access to the historical data of each person's weather station. So it's pretty neat capabilities. So slide 28, what is APRS all about? And what it is, it's humans communicating information with other humans. I put that in there because we lost 8 years of ham radio with everybody going off and buying a GPS, plugging it in a little black box, sticking it under the seat and driving around and say, whoopee, I'm on APRS. And you know what? Nobody cares. They can't talk to you. They can see where you are, but they don't know what frequency you're on. They can't talk to you. They don't know what you're doing. You're inaccessible. So nobody cares. That's not what APRS is about. APRS is the opposite. It's not what you can transmit. It's what information you can receive and display in the mobile to improve your participation in ham radio. So the first bullet there, it's for the immediate local digital and graphical information exchange between all participants in a local area or event. You are participating in a network. It shows the positions, the status, messages to and from everybody, the weather, telemetry from such things as snow gauges, water gauges, flood gauges. It shows the RF connectivity of everybody, who's their antenna height above average terrain, who can communicate the farthest. It shows all objects placed on the map by anybody. It also shows the local position and frequency of IRLP, Echolink, WinLink, nets in progress, meetings, events, and hamfests. If all of these things are not showing up on your local APRS mobile radio front panel in your car, then somebody in your area is not doing their job of putting out the information of general interest to ham radio. Typical applications are the routine local awareness of all ham radio events and assets around you. You should be able to drive into an area, and within 10 minutes, everything is supposed to be transmitted every 10 minutes. Within 10 minutes, your radio should completely capture the entire ham radio situation in an area. What frequency to go to for voice, what frequency to go to for Echolink, nets in progress, meetings, everything, and so forth. Next slide. The scope of APRS is, well, this is actually a several-year-old slide, but back then there was over 40,000 users worldwide, and basically it's based on digipeaters every 20 to 30 miles, and they're all linked by station eye gates. Everything that's transmitted anywhere on RF gets sucked into the internet, and it's available to everybody. The problem is only 2 to 3% of ham radio users use APRS, and therefore you cannot plan on it or use it for any club special event because 95% of the other people in the club show up and can't participate. So we got to do it the old-fashioned way of a pencil and a paper and a guy with a microphone reading off numbers or whatever his job is. Next slide. Here's a typical display of Dayton. Typically, now notice I'm zoomed in on only the flea market area. What you're not seeing is the surrounding 1 mile of parking places. If you zoom out that far, you'll see probably over several hundred APRS people all showing up on the map at once. A great way to find people. When you travel halfway across the country, it's kind of nice to be able to drive right up to their, or walk right up to their car. Next slide. I'm on slide 31. Various APRS stations, you know, we started with a computer and a TNC and a radio, and then we added GPS and a battery. Look in the right-hand corner there. You had to have a Palm Pilot, a TNC, a GPS, a battery, and an HT in order to be APRS portable. Well, now it's all boiled down to both Kenwood and Yaesu have full functionality, including the GPS, built into the HT. Next slide. Now, again, this is my favorite antagonist, and that is trackers. I have nothing against trackers. Trackers are fantastic for public service events and, you know, when you get out and do something and you need to track things. But they absolutely have no place as the one and only APRS asset of a ham radio operator. Ham radio was never about one-way transmissions, and APRS was never considered that either. If you're on the radio, we should be able to communicate with you. There's nothing wrong with trackers for your 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, and 10th APRS unit, but your first unit should be a two-way device so that we can, so that you're part of the net. Next slide. Now, the good news is most, all of the major tracker manufacturers these days, I think Argent Data Systems and TinyTrack now provide text displays for their trackers, and their trackers now have receivers, so they're two-way devices, and they will display on attached GPSs the positions of everybody else. So now you have the map display in the GPS, and you have the text display on a multi-line display, and so you have everything that you have in a Kenwood or a Yaesu, but you only pay about $50 for it. So again, don't be deterred by the cost of APRS. If you don't want to buy the complete all-in-one, you can build your own. Okay, slide number 34. Okay, the point here is, you know, we've had the D700 mobile for over a decade. The D710 came out a couple of years ago, and it was what I would call the beginning of APRS 2.0. That's really not a formal term, but it put in there what I've been trying to get APRS to do since the year 2000, and that is, number one, to add frequency. When you transmit your position, we want to know what frequency you're monitoring for voice. Again, APRS or ham radio is a two-way system. We want to see where you are, and we want to see what frequency you're on so we can contact you. So Kenwood added on the right-hand side of the D710 display down there, an additional 8 characters to display the frequency that's in your packet. They also added a tune button, that's the center little red circle, so that when you put your cursor on somebody that has their frequency, you just press the tune button and the radio will instantly tune to that frequency, offset, and tone. It makes it fantastic for mobile driving. You see somebody, push one button, and you can talk to it. That's been the goal of APRS since the year 2000. But now also in the D710, they increased the number of station list entries to 100. So now there's 100, the last 100 people you've heard show up in the list. And so they've also given you then sorting capabilities. You can sort by time, by call sign, or by distance. I often, when I'm mobile, will sort by distance just to see who the nearest APRS operator is. Next slide. By the way, the new Yaesu FTM 350R also has all of this capability as well. Now, this shows you that the D710 APRS display head is really a standalone display head. It can be plugged into any radio, and it can display packets and all of the APRS functions that it can on its native radio. Here, a guy has plugged the RC D710 display head into a D-star radio, and by setting the analog channel on the D-star radio to the APRS frequency, now the guy has a D-star radio that he can actually do something with. Next slide, number 36. So here's that control head attached to, it's not a control head, let me call it, well, it is a control head, but when it's detached from the radio, now it is a display head, and I've got it hooked it up to an Linko, what were those things called? Well, anyhow, it's, you know, a 2 meter, oh, it's an $88 HT. You plug the display head into it, and now you've got full functionality. The value of this is, if you live in the kind of place where you have to take the display head out of the car so your car doesn't get broken into anyway, why not bring it into the office, plug it into your HT in the office, and now you still have full APRS functionality from your desk. Next slide. Again, slide 37, this was a couple of years ago because just in December 08, Yaesu came on board and now has 4 APRS radios. There's also the ham HUD, or heads-up display. Again, this is a kit, certainly costs a lot less than $100, and hook it up to any radio. It has it has everything built in, and it gives you all of the functionality of an APRS radio if you want to roll your own. Okay, slide 38. This is a complete web page, APRStactical.html, and it was an attempt to show everybody what they're completely missing about APRS. You know, and then each one of those highlighted words is a web page in itself, showing how people don't understand it. So anyway, it's a real-time information system. You don't need GPS unless you are lost or don't know how to read a map. All of the original APRS programs have mile marks built in so that you can communicate with the other 95% of ham radio operators who don't know where they are except by reporting the nearest mile mark. In APRS DOS or UI view, for example, you can just type in that mile mark and it'll show you where that person is on the map. That allows you then to instantly place an object there so that it's a person you're talking to, even if they don't have APRS, you can see where they are. And if the APRS client software does like the original and it dead reckons that person, now that person's object will move down the road just like you are. And you can see, you can carry on a conversation and you can see when it's time to change to the next repeater or so forth. Again, most clients completely ignore mile marks. There's a lot of protocol that clients left out. All they want to do is put cute little icons on the map, and they left out the fundamental communication protocol, and so those clients do not play friendly with other clients on the air, and they tend to hog the air time, and so forth. So there's a lot of capabilities that people ignore. Next slide.